Hashtag Ask Goji Man, why is plant-based protein healthy for us and animal protein is not? Surely a protein is a protein. Great question, Anna. Let's get to it. Roll the titles. Welcome back. If we haven't met before, then hi, I'm Goji Man. I'm currently studying for a Masters in Nutrition and qualifying as a nutritionist, and next year I'll be studying for a PhD in nutritional science. I make lots of plant-based vegan health and nutrition videos under the hashtag Ask Goji Man, so if you have a question for me, then hashtag Ask Goji Man in the comments below, and I'll choose one of these questions to answer in my next video for you. So subscribe if you are interested in plant-based nutrition, improving your health or reversing disease. And without further ado, to the question. So first, let's have a look at the differences between plant-based protein and animal protein and their effects in the body. So if you think about the old school thought process in terms of animal protein, it's complete protein, it contains all the essential amino acids and lots of them. And this old school thought process is obviously that plant protein is not complete protein and it doesn't contain all of those essential amino acids. And while this old school thought process may be indeed correct that many plant-based sources of protein are incomplete, it never really asks why this would be the case. And it turns out that not having lots of complete animal proteins and lots of amino acids, that plant protein is actually better for human health, and let me give you some very specific examples of why. So if you eat animal protein, then you get lots of the amino acid leucine. Leucine from plant-based sources? Nah, not so much. So if you listen to anyone from the paleo camp or bodybuilders, etc., then you need to eat lots of leucine to build big, strong muscle. The issue is, if you eat lots of leucine in your diet, you can activate mTOR, which is an enzymatic pathway. So essentially, lots of leucine, a trigger of the mTOR enzymatic pathway, increased risk of cancer and speeding up the aging process. Another really problematic constituent part of animal protein is methionine, and the science is unwaveringly clear here. High amounts of methionine in the diet feeds cancer cells, so you really don't want to be eating too much of it. On the flip side, plant protein contains a lot of glutamic acid, and glutamic acid is an amino acid that combines with cysteine and glycine to convert into glutathione. Now, glutamic acid is hardly found in animal protein, and the problem with this is if you don't have a lot of glutamic acid in the body, then you won't produce a lot of glutathione, which is an antioxidant that protects your cells and DNA from damage. Glutathione also helps your body absorb amino acids. Now, glutathione is pivotal for keeping blood pressure down, which is why for those eating high animal protein diets with low amounts of glutamic acid and low amounts of glutathione, they tend to have higher rates of hypertension. And this glutathione-glutamic acid balance is one of the main proponents of why vegans have lower rates of hypertension and subsequent heart issues. Now, the thing that vegans need to remember is that an amino acid is an amino acid regardless of whether it's from an animal or plant-based source. It's the amounts of the amino acid that is the damaging factor in the body. And it always makes me worried for those vegans who are loading up on protein powders high in leucine, methionine and those branch chain amino acids, etc. So you may want to have a think about this moving forward. Now, while it may be leucine, methionine in conjunction with the saturated fats and cholesterol from meat that damage the body and not just the amino acid per se, we simply don't know, so I wouldn't take that risk. But fundamentally, an amino acid is an amino acid regardless of where it comes from, so maybe think twice before having that protein powder for breakfast. We also have the plant-based versus paleo proponent of this argument. Now, obviously today, everywhere you look, the paleo diet is curing everything from autoimmune conditions to heart disease. And I will be the first to admit that if you go from a standard Western type diet to a paleo style diet with little bits of meat here and there and lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, well then clearly you're going to have better health outcomes. But, and this is a very big but, what the hell is a paleo diet anyway? In the true literal sense of the word paleo, these people would be gathering lots of fruits and vegetables with only small amounts of meat. At no time in history did a paleo diet ever consist of eating cows, pigs or paleo protein bars, and it's very difficult to talk specifically about paleo type diets as there are so many different carnations of this diet. But what I will say from an outsider's point of view is that today a paleo type diet consists of more animal protein than any true paleo diet ever did, and because of this they will always have an increased risk of disease. So while a paleo diet is definitely healthier than a Western type diet, you really can't escape from the fact that by eating more meat in your diet you are increasing homocysteine, saturated fats, cholesterol, heterocyclic amines, IGF-1, which will all significantly increase your risk of heart disease and cancer and all other forms of disease. Now, the paleo movement is often bolstered by weightlifters, bodybuilders and other people who have transitioned from standard Western type diets diets to a more paleo type diet, and in many cases they feel much better. Now, I get my fair share of trolls on this channel and it's very funny, particularly from bodybuilders, and I won't repeat some of their comments, but the general argument is, hey, look at me, I'm bodybuilding, I've got so much protein, so much muscle, and look at you, you skinny little vegan. And what I always say to these people, which they never seem to understand, is that muscle does not equal health. Look at the average life expectancy of any bodybuilder, paleo type person against someone on a plant-based diet. The person on the plant-based diet will always come out on top. So yes, you could argue aesthetically, Mr. Bodybuilder, you look better than me in terms of physique, but how is that physique going to help you when you drop dead of a heart attack at 54? I'm skinny because of my genetics, not because of my diet, and you were also probably skinny before you decided to load yourself up with animal-derived protein powders. And it always makes me laugh. Do these people not realise that if you have to work so hard to build the body up, then maybe you weren't meant to be that size in the first place? And what these paleo people and bodybuilders often forget is that there is a lot healthier way of building muscle when the protein is derived from plant-based sources. And we are seeing a massive shift in professional sports as more and more athletes shift from animal proteins to plant proteins, as the science is clearly showing that physical performance, strength, resistance and recovery times are all significantly better on plant-based diets. So let's just cut to the chase and sum all of this up with hard fact and hard science. So according to the World Health Organization, adult humans should eat between 0.8 and 0.9 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But does this really matter for our overall health and longevity, whether this comes from plants or animals? And here the science says an emphatic yes. So firstly, when we consume animal proteins, there is a higher proportion of essential amino acids that I touched upon earlier on, and this increases a hormone in the body called IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor. What IGF-1 does in the body is that it stimulates cell division at a faster rate in both normal cells and also cancerous cells, and the science has been quite clear in this area. If you consistently have elevated IGF-1 levels, then your risks for cancer and malignancy are dramatically increased. Next up, animal protein causes high levels of TMAO, which is trimethylamine oxide. So when you eat animal proteins rich in choline and carnitine, the gut bacteria convert this into trimethylamine, which then gets converted in the body to trimethylamine N oxide, or TMAO. TMAO is very inflammatory in the body and damages our endothelial cells and arteries and causes widespread inflammation in the body. And high levels of TMAO in the body also make it a lot easier for cholesterol plaque formation to occur. Therefore, if you eat a diet rich in animal proteins, you are at a significantly higher risk of having cardiovascular disease during your lifetime. Next up, animal protein contains high amounts of phosphorus. And why is this so bad for us? Well, we know from the science that when you consume high amounts of phosphorus, the body needs to equalize the phosphorus levels by releasing a hormone called fibroblast growth factor 23. Just like TMAO, FGF23 can be incredibly damaging to the blood vessels and arteries. So for some, eating high amounts of animal proteins, this means that they get abnormally large hearts, which is often associated with heart disease, heart failure and sudden heart attacks. So quite simply, eating high amounts of animal protein with its high concentrations of phosphorus can increase FGF23, which in turn can cause many different issues in the body. Next up, and I didn't cover it earlier in the video and I probably should have done, but animal proteins contain higher amounts of sulfur-based amino acids. And why is this a problem? Well, when you eat higher concentrations of sulfur-based amino acids, it creates a state of acidosis in the body. So to counteract this, the body releases calcium from the bones to neutralize the acidity levels. Longer term, this has many implications in terms of overall bone health, and it's the primary cause of why those who eat higher amounts of animal proteins have higher rates of osteoporosis and hip fractures, etc. Next up, animal proteins negatively impact hormone levels in the body. So for example, we know those who consume higher amounts of animal proteins in their diet have significantly higher levels of cortisol in their body. In fact, these cortisol levels can often be double of someone who is eating normal levels of protein in their diet, say someone on a plant-based diet. And high levels of cortisol over the long term has been linked to insulin resistance and cholesterol issues in the body. Next up, high protein diets can also suppress testosterone in men. So for example, if you look at natural bodybuilders who aren't taking steroids or testosterone, their testosterone levels can drop by up to 75% in the lead up to a competition when they increase the amounts of protein in their diets. And when you interfere with these hormone levels in the body, so you decrease testosterone or you increase cortisol levels in the body, you are far more likely to gain weight as the body struggles to metabolize the food correctly. Next up, animal proteins can damage the kidneys and cause kidney disease. So for example, in America, 1 in 8 on those standard Western type diets have kidney disease as a result of the overconsumption of animal proteins. These types of diets high in animal protein can cause impairment of renal vascular function, inflammation, and subsequent rapid decrease in kidney function. High meat protein intakes result in increased dietary acid loads and compensatory increases in renal acid excretion and ammonia production, leading to metabolic acidosis with the potential to further damage the kidneys. So a lot of science waffly jargon, but essentially high protein diets cause too much acid in the kidneys and then they can simply give way. Next up, scientific fact: people who eat animal proteins don't live as long. So generally speaking, only 1 in 10,000 of us will live to the age of 100 or beyond. And what's the secret to these people? Well, they consume minimal or no animal protein. So for example, this prospective cohort study of US healthcare professionals included 131,000 participants from the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professional Follow-up Study, found that those who ate the most animal protein had a significantly higher risk of all forms of death compared to those on a plant-based diet. What was really cool about this study was that the scientists showed that when 3% of energy from plant-based protein was substituted for an equivalent amount of processed red meat protein, there was a 34% lower risk of death. Number 8, those who eat high amounts of animal proteins have higher rates of cancer. So from one of the largest ever studies looking at diet and cancer, it showed that the incidence of all cancers among vegans was significantly lower than those who ate animal proteins. And for vegans, they had a lot less of the fastest growing cancers, which include leukemias, lymphomas, breast cancers, and prostate cancers, which were more likely to kill you a lot faster. This study showed that those eating poultry animal proteins had up to triple the rate of cancer for every 50 gram of daily protein added to the diet. And finally, animal protein increases your risk of type 2 diabetes. So according to the results of this large meta-analysis study, the intake of total protein and animal protein was associated with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, both in males and females, and the intake of plant protein was associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. So I hope this video really helped and that you enjoyed it. As always, if you have a question for me, then hashtag Ask Goji Man in the comments below and I'll choose one of the questions to answer in my next video. And as always, remember to look after your body because it's the only place you have to live. And I'll see you next time.